Okay, so for our second presenter, we have someone from the county, from the Department of Public Utilities. Ben is going to talk to us about things that the county is doing to help promote electric vehicles and what they're doing for that. So Ben, take it away.
All right, thanks for the introduction. As she said, my name is Ben Olberg. I work for the county in the Department of Public Utilities. Specifically, I'm in the electric production group, which was responsible for procuring all the electrical energy for the county, as well as managing our natural gas supply. So I just wanted to start off by saying thanks to everybody who could join us here today. And I wanted to let you know what the county is doing in order to support the what I hope is soon, but eventually coming electric vehicle revolution here. And so I'd like to start by saying that a number of years ago, I think it was about 4 years ago, the Department of Public Utilities engaged a citizen committee called the Future Energy Resources Committee, and with the goal of defining what the community wanted as far as goals for energy, electrical energy, moving forward. And so one of the findings from that was that as a goal that was adopted by the Board of Public Utilities as a policy for the department, was for the department to encourage the replacement of petroleum fueled vehicles with alternative fuel vehicles, in particular electric vehicles. And one of the approaches for that is through looking at ways we could support the installation of electric vehicle charging stations in the county. So with that goal in mind, and that policy goal in mind, what the department has done is last year, or I should say early this year in January, we applied for some grants through the state, and they were part of the settlement. Most of you have probably heard of it, Dieselgate with Volkswagen. So as part of their diesel cheating, emissions cheating that they did, part of their settlement, for the court settlement, was that they ponied up several $1 billion to be spread across the US states, depending on the number of affected vehicles in each state. And part of that money in New Mexico was allocated for electric vehicle charging station grants. And so we applied for some of that, and I'm happy to report that we were awarded grants for 2 DC fast charging electric vehicle charging stations. So we're going to be putting those in the next, say, 6 months here. So by the end of the year, we should have 2 fast charging stations. One is slated to go in at the municipal building parking lot, right across from where the currently level 2 chargers are sited. And the other one is positioned at going to be positioned at the White Rock Visitor Center, near the handicap parking area. So the goals for those is we're hoping to use those as a stepping stone for the county to understand what kind of consumption and use patterns we see and how many people actually use the things, to inform our future decision-making process for later installations of charging stations or throughout the other places in the county as well. So we're really looking forward to that, and we have as I said, this is a research project for us, essentially, to gather the information that we can use for the future. So I do want to point out, if anyone does have any ideas about where they think valuable locations for future charging stations might be, please do get in contact with the county Department of Public Utilities. You can just call our customer care line, and they'll send the message to the right person, which is me. That's one thing. Another thing I'd wanted to mention is it's important to note that transitioning from petroleum vehicles to electric vehicles can lead to reduction in emissions, which is one of the motivations for many people to get these vehicles. However, if you're simply charging your vehicle up from the utility power, and the utility power is using coal-fired power plants, that you may have improved the situation locally, and overall it does represent a reduction in carbon emissions, but it's still not as good as it could possibly be. So with that in mind, the county is also looking at approaches to reduce our coal-fired power production. We're in a couple of years, one of our largest coal-fired power plant will actually be shutting down. So that power source will be going away along with the associated emissions. So we're currently seeking to get clean power as a replacement for that. And one of the approaches, which we recently signed an agreement with energy developer, is for renewable power, 15 megawatt around the clock renewable power supply. It's primarily solar, PV, and wind power. That's the goal. So they're currently working to get the developers currently looking for sources of that power. And hopefully that'll settle down in the next year or so, and we can make that complete. The neat thing about the arrangement is that it's not just solar and wind, but it's also backed up power. So it means it's firm power for us. Normally you don't get power from a photovoltaic array when the sun doesn't shine at night, and you don't get power from a wind turbine when the wind's not blowing. So they're gonna handle all the details of making sure that they have enough wind and solar and a little bit of thermal generation as well to back that up in the moments when you have neither wind or solar available. But and that does also point out an alternative source that I know at least one of our speakers will be following up with, about how members in the community are increasingly adding their own photovoltaic systems onto their rooftops to help offset their consumption. And so that's another aspect that the county supports through our net metering program, which is about the most generous program I believe that you can get out there for supporting photovoltaics rooftop development. So that's about all I've got to say. So I do encourage questions. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be on the line at the end when we have our question and answer session. But until then, I'll be sitting tight and waiting for anyone to contribute. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ben. And we do have questions coming in. So yeah, for both Ben and Wendy. So great. So keep sending in questions. Now we're going to send it over to Galen Gisler. And it's a great tie-in because he does have photovoltaics. So he's going to talk about how he uses those with his electric vehicle.
Right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is our 2017 Chevrolet Bolt. All-electric vehicle with 60 kilowatt hours of battery underneath the floor. And as you see, we have solar panels on our house. The county's net metering system, which Ben mentioned, is, I agree, is a very generous program. And so essentially we get power to power this vehicle for free. But otherwise, I mean, even if we didn't have the solar photovoltaic system on our house, this is an incredibly economical vehicle to operate. You can drive even at the retail rate of 11.5 cents per kilowatt hour. I can drive this car to Santa Fe and back for about $1.50, which is you know, something about 3 to 4 times less than what you would pay in an ordinary gas-powered vehicle. We've been very pleased with this car. There is virtually no maintenance on an electric vehicle. There's no oil to change, of course, no gas to put in. There's we have to rotate the tires every once in a while, and of course we fill it with fill the windshield washer fluid. But apart from that, there's virtually no maintenance. What I'd like to do now is take you inside the car and show you some of the features. In a way, it's a real geek mobile because it gives you lots of information on what on how you're doing. You've got the range meter over here on the left-hand side, which we're at full charge. It's showing 261 miles. The EPA advertised is 238, so we actually do better than the EPA. We're getting a range of about 4.9, almost 5 miles per kilowatt hour, and so with that 60 kilowatt hours of power, we should of energy in the battery, we should be able to get between 240 to 300 miles on a range. This meter here is called the guessometer because it's it doesn't take into account your terrain or other conditions. It's simply an estimate of how much of how many miles you can travel. Over here, you see a little bit of the detail that it gives you. So this morning I drove just around the western area, 1.7 miles, used 1 kilowatt hour. But I've had the air conditioning on, so that's considerably less than the 4.9 miles per kilowatt hour that we've been doing, and it's been mostly sitting here since. And then you can get a history of your efficiency as a function of time since for the last 50 miles or so, to see how well you're doing. And then it even gives you a check on how well you're doing in terms of your driving technique. Are you driving in such a way as to maximize your energy efficiency, and so forth. Of course, we can't do much about the terrain. I have the air conditioning on, so the climate settings give me a negative score. Electric cars do better in warm temperatures than in cold temperatures. We get about a 10 to 20% loss in efficiency over the winter time, but still, got plenty of efficiency to go around. So there's lots of information that this car tells you about how well it's doing and how much energy you're spending, and it's for geeks like me, it's a very pleasant feature to have. So we're very pleased with this car, and like I say, we've had it since November of 2017, so just a couple of years and a half, and yeah, it's been great for us, and yeah, I'd be glad to answer any questions about it.
Okay, thank you, Galen, for that overview of your car, and it's cool to see all the geeky stuff inside. So I know that's a fun thing to play with a lot. Okay, next we're going to Jim Tenkate, and he's gonna show us off his Tesla. If anyone saw the holiday light parade last year, we had the Tesla that was, we solar charged it and solar charged our lights with, so it's the same Tesla. So Jim's gonna talk us through that and show it off for us.
Okay, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm actually sitting in the back seat of the car, and the car, just so you know, is that white one right there next to the Triumph. So if you have time later, send me an email, and if you'd like more details about the car, I can do that. Right now, it's nice and cool in here. I have the climate control set to camping mode, and I'll show you what that looks like. So there's my display. And that's pretty much all I see right now. These cars. Fold the rear seats down, put a bed in, and sleep and put it on camping mode, which is actually pretty nice. We've done that a couple of times. And if you're on a trip and you stop at an RV park and you're sleeping in your car, you can also charge your car while you sleep. It's pretty nice. So time is perhaps a little short, and I like to leave time for lots of questions afterwards. So I'm going to focus on just two things about owning an EV in general. So if you have Tesla or Bolt specific questions, you can ask Galen and I either after this, or you can send us emails and we're happy to chat about. In fact, more than happy to chat about these. So the two things I want to focus on, is this really like a normal car? And the second thing is, how expensive and how hard is it to charge? So the first point is it like a normal car? Well, I traded in a Pontiac for this car. The Pontiac was a nice car, it was cushy, it was supercharged. I went lots of places with it, but I decided it was to do something new. Like Galen, this is a 2017 model. It spent 3 winters here in Los Alamos, and it's parked outside, it doesn't get garage space. The Triumph gets those. And I now have 68,000 miles on the car. So it's the car I drive every day. I drive it all over the place. I've driven to Sacramento, to LA, the big LA, to Houston a few times, up to Michigan. It's great. Having driven this car for 3 years and lived with it, I'll never buy a gasoline car again. So that's just the way it goes. Second thing to focus on is charging. So for the first year, I didn't do anything special. I ran an extension cord from an outside outlet and charged overnight. That got me about 60 or 70 miles of range. And that was plenty good enough for what I did. Recently, I decided that I wanted a bit faster charging, so I stole one of the hot tub circuits that the previous owner had put in and we're not using, and I decided I could then charge at 240 volts, 30 amps, which means I can pretty much charge in 4 or 5 hours overnight. And that's worked out really well. The other places I charge when convenient, I guest scientist at the lab, so I'll go back there. They have charge points there, and the fees for using charge points are about half of what you pay for residential. So it's actually cheaper for me to charge at the lab than it is at home. And I figure I save enough to buy a cup of coffee about every week by doing it that way. So you're not really saving a gob of money, but a little bit. And also the county has chargers too, and I kind of use those when they're convenient. If I feel like I want some exercise, I'll stop at White Rock, plug in there, walk home, have dinner, and walk back and get a couple of miles of worth of walking. So I do not have solar at home, although I'm considering it. Now, what about long trips? Long trips, you've got a couple of options. If you're owning a Tesla, there are 7,200 chargers in the US, and they're along all the major highways. If you go to PEEC's website, there's a link to sort of a handout I put together last year, and it's got a map, and the map has gotten bigger, and you're within about 150 miles of a supercharger, and the car's range is over 300 miles, so I really never worry about that. The other nice thing, though, is that for every other EV out there, including Teslas, Volkswagen is putting in Electrify America stations all over the place. And you'll mostly find them in Walmart parking lots. There's one not far from the supercharger in Santa Fe. And that's nice. The prices are about the same. They have fast charging. That network is still growing. It's not as extensive as Tesla's, but it's nice. Charging times on a long trip vary from, say, 15 to 40 minutes. There are places in Texas where the superchargers are pretty far apart. There's not much coverage for Electrify America, and so you really have to spend a longer time. So it does indeed take longer to do a long trip. In my younger days, I would drive up to visit mom in Michigan and stop 3 times and gas up, do the usual nature break, grab a bite to eat, and jump back in the car. That you cannot do with an EV. On the other hand, it fits my lifestyle pretty well right now. If you're curious about the price to charge when so supercharging and Electrify America charging is probably the most expensive charging that you'll ever do. If you charge at home or at a county charger or someplace else, charge points, those are lots cheaper. But the supercharge is going to cost a bit more. So as an example, and again, there's an example in the handout, we drove to visit my daughter in LA and spent a week there and then drove back. And the total charges for the electricity to do that trip were $88. And I think I dropped more money on lunch one day than I did for that $88. So it's really expensive to drive. It's a blast. And if you want to know more about Teslas, send me an email and we'll talk. And if COVID gets to the point where I can happily give people rides, or you want to drive the car, I'll let you do that too. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thanks, Jim. And I put a link to your handout in the chat. So if anyone's interested in that, they can check it out. It has a lot of good information all through there. Okay. All right, so we have some questions that did come in. So Wendy, if you're there, I'm gonna start with you. There's a couple of questions about your bikes. All right, so someone wanted to know how long do the bikes take to charge?
overnight easily.
Yeah, we usually just plug them in when we come home. Overnight is definitely plenty. I would guess that probably 3 or 4 hours would be enough to get you an adequate charge to do any of our longer bike rides around the county.
Great.
It's just a regular outlet. You just plug them into the wall and they'll be ready when you're ready to go again.
All right. Okay. And then another one wondered, for the mountain bike, how do you transport it to the Jemez?
Okay. Well, that's a very good question. We got a one-up bike rack, which can actually hold 2 of our electric bikes. So even though they weigh 50 to the one-up bike rack, we just have that on a regular hitch mount on the back of our truck. And it actually comes with a ramp in case you don't want to just lift up your 60-pound bike onto the bike rack. You can actually put the ramp on, wheel it up onto the bike rack, and again, it'll hold 2 60-pound e-bikes easily, no problem at all. So that's what we do.
Great. Okay. I think the next question I have was for Ben. Well, first, there is a question. Someone said that one of the chargers at PEEC was broken last weekend. Is the county going to fix it?
You know, I'm not really sure what the status of that charger is.
All right.
I'll have to look into that, but thanks for bringing that to my attention.
Okay. Another question is, someone wanted to know, do we use hydro power?
That's a good question. And yes, we do. Actually, we have hydroelectric power, and you'll notice I'm using a virtual background on my screen if you're watching me. But the county actually owns 2 hydroelectric power facilities. One of them is sited at Abiquiu Reservoir, and the other one is sited at El Vado Reservoir, and they both flow off the same water sources. But you can see there, behind me, I'll move there. There it is. You can see the outlet works of the facility there. There's a big building housing the crane for installing and removing the turbine equipment as needed. So we get a significant portion of our electricity from these hydroelectric plants. However, they are seasonal. We don't get to control what they flow and the amount of energy that it produces. The Army Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Reclamation both control the dams associated with these facilities. And so they tell us how much water we flow and that we generate as much power as we can out of them. Generally, most of the power is generated in the spring due to snow melt. And their policy is they try to maintain a natural flow of the river as if it were equivalent to what the natural snow melt flows would be. So we get most of our flow and electricity generated in the winter, in the spring, early summer. Did I get that right? Late spring, early summer. We also get a little bit of electric power from the federal hydropower sources.
All right. And one more question for you, Ben. What are the county's plans for electrification of the vehicle fleet for the county?
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you asked. I meant to speak to that. So the county replaces vehicles as they approach the end of their maintenance schedule. Typically 7 to 10 years is what I think we run for our vehicles. The utilities department, my organization, Electric Production, actually did recently replace a vehicle. I really pushed hard for an EV, and we almost got a Bolt, but we do a lot of trips to out of state and to other areas, and so we decided that it maybe wasn't the best fit for our use case scenario. Now, if we'd got a Tesla maybe and its supercharger network, we could have made a go of it, but we didn't figure the optics were good on spending that much on a EV. So we didn't do that, but we did Fleet, which provides vehicles for general county use, did recently purchase a Chevy Bolt. And so that will allow us and other county users, employees, to use that vehicle. And so we intend on trying that out, and it'll provide some good input to the county on, things that some of the other speakers mentioned about maintenance and that sort of stuff in the county's fleet management. we'll see how that works out for us. We also do plan in the utilities department to get another bolt as soon as one comes up for replacement, another vehicle comes up for replacement to replace a petroleum vehicle, perhaps for some more focused use around the county for employees who go to do site visits and that sort of thing, for meter changeouts, meter reads, that sort of thing, that's more amenable to the short hop travel that they might do.
All right, thanks. And you have one more question.
All right, keep them coming.
I think this is the last question I have, but so if anyone else has a question, go ahead and send it in the chat right now. So the other one was about what type of DC fast charging, CCS, CHADEMO, any chance of getting a Tesla supercharger or at least a Tesla destination charger?
We haven't pursued superchargers primarily because that's a Tesla proprietary solution. So we were hoping to get something a little more general that's suitable for all the other vehicles as well, even though Tesla does have the lion's share of the EV market currently. So what we're looking at, we're going to go through a competitive procurement process here to select our vendor and supplier for the electric vehicle charging stations. So what we're going to specify is a minimum charging rate of approximately 65 kilowatt, which is, on the lower end currently for DC fast chargers, but we'll see what the suppliers come up with. Maybe we'll get something at a higher rate, but that would be sufficient for most general purposes that we're looking at. Let's see what else can I say about that. So I said no superchargers specifically. Oh, as far as the connector types, yeah. So we're going to specify a dual port style charger where it supports both the CHAdeMO as well as the SAE standard. So whatever vehicle you got, whether it's got either style, it'll work without adapters. All
right, and you got another one. It says, this person thinks it would be interesting to compare gas and electric vehicle operating costs as part of the county fleet. Will you share that information eventually?
I don't know. I have to go and look into that more. I would like to, make sure that ensure that the county does leverage as much as they can. I do know we have our fleet maintenance department and they keep track of this sort of thing. So we haven't really gone through the details of how we're going to disseminate that and how we're going to use it. Our sample size is really small currently, just with one bolt, but we'll see what we can do. And again, that is the county's experience, which will be different from your typical residential homeowner type user. So, but yeah, everything that the county does is really an open book for the entire community, and we do it for the community. So whatever information we get, we'd be happy to share. Just don't have any yet.
All right. Okay. And I think there's a message from Jim that says for his Tesla Model 3, it's been about 2 cents a mile over 68,000 miles. So, all right. One other thing, would the county ever get like some electric buses? Like
excellent question. Actually, yes. There was a separate, I believe it was a federal grant. I'm not really sure, but the county did get awarded a grant for I don't know what the match was, so I can't say what the actual award was, but I believe there are 2 electric buses that the county will be getting here, probably I'm not sure the timeline. I think it's within the next year or so, as well as they're also getting a couple of chargers for those, because buses take pretty big chargers. So they're going to be getting a couple of those to support the buses. And so I'm not sure if they've figured out what routes they're going to be running those on. But yeah, so that is something you can look forward to seeing here coming up in the next year or so.
Great. All right. Well, I think those are all the questions I've received so far. Again, if you have any other questions for anyone specifically, they're happy to answer questions from you. So if I don't see, oh wait, just got another one. Someone thought they saw something they thought were chargers at Ashley Pond. Are there chargers there?
I am not aware of that. As part of our grant application process, we went and surveyed all the existing electric vehicle charging stations throughout the entire county, and I'm not aware of any there. We did consider that as a potential candidate site. However, we decided that due to the location of the electrical infrastructure, that it wasn't optimal. Another alternative site that we are not planning on currently developing, but we may put in as our next round of EV chargers, is to put a level 2 charger, not a fast charger, just a normal, typical commercial level 2 charger at the Mesa Library parking lot. What would that be? That would be the west parking lot, I believe. So we are considering that as a second round as we get more information with our other stations.
All right. Another question. Are the plugs for lights along Central Avenue available for charging?
You know, I don't know what the policy is on that. That's a good question, and that ties in with something else that I didn't mention but have thought about. Is when I was preparing for the EV charging station grants, and I presented to the library board about our plans for the Mesa Library's parking lot site. So one of the people in the meeting asked me about whether the county had any plans to put in electric bike charging stations. And I scratched my head at that because I'd never heard that question before. And I thought more about what it entails. There's no such thing as a commercial electric bicycle charging station. It's more, it comes down to just being a standard 120 volt outlet in a safe place that you can secure your electric bike, because electric bikes are significantly pricier than your typical bike. So I don't know what the policy is on plugging into those outlets that are along Central Ave there. I will see if I can find out the answer, and I'm not sure how maybe I can get your contact information. I can get you an answer, or we can disseminate that somehow publicly on our website. But I'm gonna guess that they're not anticipated for people to plug into, but I don't know. And I'm not sure anybody would really complain.
All right. Okay. Well, I think so far that's all the questions we've gotten, unless another one comes in. So I'd like to thank, again, all of our presenters for their time today. And at least you didn't have to stand out in the sun for 6 hours to talk to people. So, and I want to thank the Department of Public Utilities for helping us with this and bringing this electric vehicle show to you every year for part of ScienceFest. Speaking of ScienceFest, there is one more talk that PEEC is having this afternoon at 2 o'clock. You can sign up on our website for that. It's about, and my mind just went blank. I think it's about photographing animals on camera. And one final thing is another DPU PEEC project is in a couple weeks. We're going to have a virtual camp for 4th through 6th graders, and it's about water and energy conservation. It's free, but you do have to register. So that's on our website too. So it's peaknature.org, and that's where we have all sorts of information and an outdoor challenge going on, all sorts of stuff. So thanks again for tuning in and spending time with us. Thank you.